Some of them they'll give you a staple length of between 6 to 7 inches or between 5 and 7 inches, whatever it might be, so you know the variance within it. But I'll take you through the process so you understand how we actually get to the point of where we are here in the mill. So, the way it starts is we start with greasy fibre. So, greasy fibre, you are most welcome to touch smell it, and you can smell it as well. Absolutely.
If you touch greasy fibre, it's probably a good idea to wash your hands.
Well, I don't know. If you love it.
To be honest, we've had this for a little while, so I think it should be fine. Okay, so we start with the greasy fibre, and the greasy fibre is basically, it's the fleece. So the local farmers around here would bring their fleeces down in the back of their tractors, in their pickups, whatever they might be doing, on trailers, and they'll take it to the British Wool Marketing Board grading station, which is, if any of you know the area, is just down the road here, which is really nice. So we've got a grading station on our doorstep here. It will then be graded by people who are extremely proficient and professional in their job. They train for anything up to 5 years before they are given the sort of the full remit of being graders, professional graders, because there's quite a lot to look for. They're looking for colour, they're looking for substance, they're looking for the density of the wool, they're looking for any number of factors which they then have to write within a report, which they send back to the wool board. That information then goes into the auction. So the auctions are then set up in lots, and at that point we then buy the fibre at that point. We're lucky because we're here, and if there's a lot coming through, we can go and see it down at the wool board and have a look at it and see whether it's something that we want or not. So we have that option, which is really quite useful.
Will you always be handling it in person before you buy it, or is there online buying
Not always.
as well?
No, not always. Turn that back on for Daisy when she goes up because she's stupid. Sorry, your question was?
Is there sometimes online buying, or would the buyer always handle it in person beforehand?
There is online buying. The way that the buying system works, the reason being this takes high volume. So into this we can put a lot of fibre, and we can also put some of the more difficult fibres, so silks and nylons, will go into this machine. This is my machine. I spend all day on it.
These machines, you said, are refurbished.
Yeah.
Are these all made in this country?
Pretty much so, yeah. Prince and Smith are pretty much responsible historically for most of the spinning, most of the Bradford system machines that were made. Butler is a Prince and Smith, Priscilla's a Prince and Smith. So yeah, all UK made. One or two, I think the gill box that we have in the back room, which is A2D2, that one came from Lithuania. So I think that might have been made in Germany, that one originally, but these certainly were made in the UK. Right, this is just to explain to you, this is called a faller bar. Okay, and the faller bar sits in here. So underneath all this lot in here, you've got a load of faller bars in here, as you can see. They run as a top set and a bottom set, and they run together to draw the fibre through and to help that alignment process. We have different pin numbers on these. Some have
combs.
It is a comb, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. But we don't call it a comb because a comb's a different machine in this business. So we call them faller bars. And they have different numbers of pins. They're either 4, 5 or 6 pin, and obviously the 6 pin is the finest, and that tends to be what we're running on these machines because we want to really break up the fibre as it comes through and blend it as much as possible. Okay, so let's set him running. You can hear and see what it does. Run for too long because with the number of tours that we've got we'll end up having to change everything.
An example here of what yarn that would be producing? 'Cause it's hard to sort of envisage what colour that would eventually be.
Oh, now there's a very good question. I think okay, this is a Princeton Smith rapier draw box. And what is a draw box? Well, the draw box is starting to turn that top into something that we can start to use within our system. But it's a gradual process. At the end of this tour, I'll show you our big machine next door, which does all of this in one go. But it's nice to walk you through historically how the Bradford drafting system worked. So this takes it from a top to what we call a heavy roving. And I'll just run him so you can see him operating. But what he's doing, he's coming down through here, two sets of rollers basically. It's starting to draw the fibre apart. It doesn't stretch it. You actually create a distance between the rollers which is more than the staple length. So the idea being it can just draw the fibres out rather than actually try to pull them apart. So it's really important that we get that we know the staple length and we know what's called the ratch, which is what this distance is here. And that's important because we use the same system over the next three machines. Okay? It's also got an auto leveler on here, and what that does is it just picks up the thick and thin bits as it's going through, and it says thick bit, thin bit, thick bit, thin bit, and it makes it all regular as it comes out the other end. Okay. Right, let's just run him so you can see him operating. Everybody see? Installed a lot of safety features on these because obviously historically they didn't come with safety features. They didn't think about things like that in the 60s. So we have little cut-off systems, so if you break through and accidentally try and stop it with your hand or something stupid, it will actually cut it out and stop it from moving. So we've taken some precautions over time. So you can see now we're starting to get a heavy roving. Yeah. On there. Once we've done that and we've put them onto these bobbins, we have two different types of bobbins. We have the plastic bobbins with rollers here and here. So it's coming through here. It's that distance there again is longer than the staple length of the fibre. It's allowing it to be slightly drawn out, and it's also at the same time putting a small amount of twist in. The twist doesn't affect the final fibre itself, the final thread. All it's doing is it's put in to hold it together to keep it strong, so that we don't have it even pulling off when we're actually spinning and breaking. That's the and sometimes that twist you have to increase it a little bit or decrease it a little bit depending on how it behaves on the spinner. Okay. Now again, we're now coming down. You can see we've got the bobbins on the bottom and we're operating with smaller bobbins here. So we'll run him. Similar to the way that Drusilla works, is it's got a table here which holds the bobbins and moves up and down slowly. So it's giving it an even feed onto the bobbins. And the fun and games of this one is as you start to get to the end of these, to what we want. This at the moment is running what's called a single 8. And interesting, you'll see on the end here, two bits of paper. This is running on a 47 gear, that's running on a 42 gear. So although they're the same fibre and they're getting the same count, they've behaved very differently in the process coming through, but we can make those final adjustments here so that they come together as a similar type of thread at the end. Okay. So the way these are operating, they're coming through here. This is what we call the ratch, and this bit's called the flume. We can control the ratch here, and we gauge it by this particular scale here, and we have predetermined figures. We know what they are. We do these time and time again, so we just adjust accordingly. And we can adjust the flume here by taking this distance up or down. It's got a little ambler, and the idea of the ambler is that it just holds the fibre in place as it's coming through and stops it from sort of going a bit mad in between, because there's quite a distance between there, and certainly a lot longer than the staple length, so it could potentially fly apart if you didn't have the ambler. So that holds it in place. coming through here and it's then going through what's called a balloon system. And the balloon system, it sort of throws it around. It's coming onto a traveller at the bottom here. You can see there's a traveller at the bottom sitting on a metal ring, which is why it's called a ring spinner. And that's driven by a belt that runs through the bottom, and as it drives these posts round, it drags the traveller with it, and thereby throwing it onto the cop as it does that. And it moves up and down slowly until it gets to the top, and when it gets to the top it goes, thank you very much, and doffs. And it goes down to the bottom and we change it over and off we go to the next one. Okay, so I'll just turn him on and you can see him preparing. System here, just so the outside box are perfect, only because it moves at quite a speed around here, so it's if you want to see the threads a bit clearer, have a look on the other side. It's a lighter fibre on the other side, and it's a little bit clearer. Balloon system, you see it's operating in here and throwing it through there and round there, and that traveller is dragging it round, and what it's producing, that fibre, you can see it spinning in my fingers, and that twist that goes in there is very important. Yeah, the twist that we put in is very important, and the twist that we put in is called a Z twist. There's a Z twist and an S twist, and Daisy will tell you all about the S twist when you go upstairs. But we put the Z twist in, which puts that strength into the fibre. So, but ultimately you want it to balance out, because at the moment, if you take that fibre off there, that will actually spin round in your fingers and coil up. So you need to let it relax, and you need to then put it through the second system, which we'll show you shortly. So that's pretty much how we reach the thread. Everybody happy with all? Yes. Beautiful. Right. Well, we'll go through, just have a quick look at Kevin on the way through, and then I'll pass you on to Dave. Of our yarn range within that figure.
Do the machines get hot when they're all running? If it's warmer,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But the extraction systems, there's a lot of heat gets built up in here. We have to use a lot of moisture within the business, because otherwise the fibre dries out. The worst possible situation, believe it or not, is cold and dry. Cold and dry for us is terrible. Everything really misbehaves on cold and dry. Hot and humid, it's lovely. Hot and humid, everything's super happy, and it gets really stretchy, and it off it goes. It's lovely. But we have to use a certain amount of moisture, and that's used throughout the process, so that we know by the point of coming to the spinner that it's got a...
Okay, so welcome to the mezzanine of the mill. Upstairs we have, to begin with, Gino. Gino is our newest machine. He's like the supercar of the mill. He is 2016. He was installed by a lovely man from Italy called Gino, hence the name. And what Gino does is he takes the single yarn from the cop of Kevin, of which you've just seen, or the tube of Butler, which you've just seen, obviously they'd be full, and he turns them into a cone or a package. On this side, so that's the single, on this side we have the folded yarn, and that takes from Mr. Boyd, who you'll be introduced to next, the full bobbin, and turns that into another cone. So what he does is essentially reformat one thing into the other. He is very quiet, he's fast, and because he's all electrical, when he goes wrong, we cannot hear him with a spanner. We need to get a special electric engineer in to come and fiddle around and see what's going wrong, which doesn't happen often because he is so new. I will demonstrate what he does, but first I thought I'd quickly show you the splicer. And what the splicers are is that they take two ends of yarn, and that's the splicer compressor going off and on the whole way through the tour. He takes two ends of yarn, cross them over with each other, you press the button, there's a really powerful blast of air that splits all the fibres up and then they come back together, so you don't have knots in your yarn. There is a little irregularity, but it's nothing like you would have with a knot. So we'll very quickly demonstrate. Over one, over the other, press it down, and then you get essentially a seamless piece of yarn instead of a big knot, which is very, very useful. With Gino, it's very much like hooking up a sewing machine. It's not particularly complicated, and all you have to do is press start.
Because of where it's spinning on the bottom?
Yes, so we will be pulling it through the system onto, so this is what makes it a cone essentially,
Yeah.
and that is what your final product will be. A much larger mother machine, he was taken away from that mother, and he's not very happy about it. He's grumpy, so he breaks all the time. He's 1960s, and I said he was from Glasgow, so that's kind of Mr. Boyd's backstory. And I love Mr. Boyd. Like I said, he breaks all the time. We really know each other very well. And what he does is he takes the single yarn that we've just seen on the cones, and he gets the folds or the plies and then puts them together to make a folded yarn which you can then knit or crochet with, or whatever your heart desires. We have the capability to go from 2 to 4 fold. The fold does not necessarily mean the weight of the yarn. So you can have a 4-ply yarn, but that doesn't mean it's a 4-ply. That might mean it's a worsted. It's the thickness of the singles that determine the weight. So this, for instance, these are all Devon Naturals. This is do you remember which ones I've cooked up? Now, and I won't run it to the end of course because that would take quite a while. What we have now is the folded singles into a 3-ply yarn, but it is actually a DK weight. I don't know if you wanted to have a look at all. Should I pass it on? They obviously will be a lot fuller. These are just examples right now.
So this is local.
This is our Devon Naturals. This is from Devon. Yeah. These are our home turf sheep. It's such a nice. Oh my goodness, that's a question. I don't know. I couldn't possibly tell you. Oh no, I
Right.
These are good. The microns. You might have to look at the label. I should know that, but I couldn't possibly tell you. It was a bit like, so the chap downstairs is my dad, and I was just like, Dad, what does the S and the Z mean this morning? And they literally, so I know what they mean in the way of one goes one way, one goes the other way. That's why it folds really well, but I have no idea whether they use an S and a Z. And then we are slowly but surely working out that when a bit falls off, you go, oh, it is together! Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. I don't know the technical term, I just use
No,
its
I
name.
used to. My brain isn't working right now. But anyway, we did used to have the machines that did it here, but then we started doing more and more and more, and we just couldn't cope, so we had to send it up country. But yes, we used to do it all here, but that very small amount goes up there, and they are ours, essentially, in every fashion you can think of. Right, this is Gillian. Gillian is our skein winder. She will make 100 or 50 gram skeins, of which will be twiddled and then sold off in shows or on the website and such. Gillian is the oldest machine in the mill. She's 1890. This iron framework in the middle and the crank at the end, they are the only things that are 1890. So much like the ship of Theseus, is she still the oldest machine in the mill, having had everything replaced over the last 130 years? But I like to think that she is. She's very simple, really easy to use, and she just creates rainbows. So she is a pleasure for most people who work at the mill. She's so easy to pick up, and she's who you are introduced to when you first start working here. I'm going to press her on. She does move quite quickly, but she's quite quiet, and it's a nice breeze. Will be by hand, yeah. Oh, really? Oh, you're the person who's standing there. It's oddly cathartic, I think. Why do you think it? Maybe not being the person standing there. Yeah, it does. I quite like it. Yeah, that's true. If you're doing like a lace, 100 grams of lace, that would be fun. We have currently on this machine yarnadelic worsted, so it doesn't have a terribly long spin.
Bahar is British makers of luxury yarns and socks. No public success.
Yeah. What about